This is the Oberheim Matrix-12 from 1985, the last big analog polysynth of the 80s. Today, we're checking it out. Oberheim released the Expander in 1984. That's a 6-voice version of the Matrix-12 that came the year after. Now, both the Expander and the Matrix-12 has an enormous amount of power underneath its hood. Let's check out some specs. Each of the voices has 2 oscillators, a noise generator, a 15-mode filter, you have a FM modulation generator, you have 3 tracking generators, 4 RAM generators, you have 5 LFOs and 5 envelopes and several VCAs. So it's an enormous powerhouse of a synth back then and now as well. So let's check out the back. You have stereo output and mono. You also have a trigger input, so you can trigger your LFO or envelopes, have them synced up. 2 configurable pedal inputs and 1 advanced chain input so you can step through programs. You have cassette from N2 to store patches, and you have MIDI in, out and through. And of course, the flexibility of the synth is enormous. The modulation matrix is a term used to describe what's going on inside here. And this is really a big, fat, modular synth. You just don't have any patch cables. And that makes it possible to make sounds like these. Lush, big, fat, juicy, but also effect sounds and manipulated sounds for sound design, like these. Let's have a look at my sponsor for this video, PCBWay. And PCBWay, they are a manufacturer of custom-made circuit boards for your electronics projects. but they also have online CNC machining, 3D printing, injection molding, sheet metal fabrication, etc. So whatever you're in need of in terms of custom-made circuit boards or parts associated with that, you should definitely check out PCBWay. I'll leave a link for you in the video description. And even if they can't fit a knob or fader for every parameter on the synth, the layout is actually very good and fast and easy to use once you know it. You have 3 big displays showing parameters and values. And you have the programmer section to the left where you can choose things like single mode or multi-mode, and you can always see the voices used in a single program or a multi-program. The button where you choose between voices 1 through 6 or 7 through 12 is the only button separating this from the expander, because this has 12 voices where the expander has 6. The displays do not flicker in real life. This is just my camera's shutter speed not synced up to the refresh rate of those displays. And as with all old big analog polysynths, you sometimes need to tune the oscillators or other sections of the synth. So this is where you can do that. I'm now tuning the VCOs. Okay, moving on, in the middle of the synth, you have the page modifiers section. And this is where the action is, depending on what patch page you're editing at the moment. You have soft keys and a set of rotary encoders to change values. And to the right, you have the patch page select, where you can select the VCO1, VCO2, the FM generator or lag generator, the tracking generator, the filter, the envelopes, the LFOs, or the ramp generator. And how this all works is actually printed on the synth itself, so let's have a closer look at one of the page select sections. In this case, the VCO1. And so the parameters you can change within VCO1 is written inside the blue squares. And inside the blue circles, well, these are the values you can change by using the rotary encoders associated with those parameters. The green text, well, that shows what parameters within the VCO1 can be modulated. So here, the frequency, the pitch can be modulated, the pulse width modulation, and the VCA can also be modulated. At the bottom left here, you can also see the word trans behind VCO1, and that refers to multimode. When the M12 is in multimode, this button can be used to transpose that voice in a multimode setting or setup. Bottom left, you have those 2 classic iconic Oberheim levers, 1 and 2, both sprung, identical. And while I'm playing, you can check out the display here. It shows what voice is playing at any given time by that little dot. And this is in single mode, so of course it's the same patch number showing for each of the voices. So just like earlier, I'm now in patch page select VCO1, and I can change things like the frequency, the pitch. And by the way, you can go below 0, you just have to do it in another way. So I'm using the rotary encoders to change values, and I'm using the soft keys underneath each parameter to choose just that if I want to change the values with the rotary encoders. And by pressing the button named page 2, I get access to, among several things, the different waveforms I can choose for this oscillator. And I can do the same thing for VCO2, changing the pitch, etc., etc., choosing waveforms for that oscillator. And it's also under VCO2 that you have the noise generator as a waveform. And it's also under VCO2 you have the ability to sync up the oscillators. VCO2 can be hard synced to the VCO1. Let's check out the filter, a 15-mode filter with a nice 4-pole low-pass filter, of course. Oberheim famous. And these are resonant filters, of course. And so when you've dialed in that basic sound at the beginning, now comes the fun part. How do you modulate the different parameters to really shape the sound? And this is where you use the modulation matrix. At the top row here, you can see all the different sources of modulation you have. So if I want to modulate the frequency or the pitch, well, I just press that soft button, frequency, and I now have to select the modulation source. So in this case, I want to use an envelope, so I press envelope and I choose number 5. I'm going to use envelope number 5, and I can set a value up to plus 63 or down to minus 63. That's the effect, how much the envelope is going to take, modulate the pitch. But of course, it's depending on how the envelope number 5 is set. So let's go into envelope number 5 and check it out. Now, if you head over to my Patreon page, you will get access to a much longer, much more in-depth video where I go through the Matrix-12. So that's just a little tip for you. Multimode is where you create those big fat patches with the voices panned left and right, etc. But you can also set up different sounds in different zones to create complex patches and sounds and patterns played by using only 1 or 2 fingers. Let's go for some fat fifths. Or let's do some soaring leads using those famous Oberheim opposite direction levers. Well, these were some of the features and sounds of the mighty Oberheim Matrix-12 from 1985, the last big analog polysynth of the 80s. A big massive thanks to Rune Flobach for loaning me his Oberheim Matrix-12. Thanks, man. You'll get it back soon, I promise. A big thanks to my Patreon supporters that makes it possible for me to do this on a weekly basis, and a big thanks to my sponsor of this video, PCBWay. As always, I'm Espen Kraft and I am the 80s. Until we see each other again, thanks for watching, cheers.